I've been a refugee, I think, from when I was 2. So, you know, and one of the many things I think I've always lived with is separation, death, and interruption in my life. And I think imagination was one of the things that, you know, this continuous flow of being a refugee, this movement has enhanced tremendously. And I think in my mind as a writer, my head, it's always been a place I've always sought refuge, if you like, before even going, you know, to seek a safe place somewhere else. So my imagination has been the place I've always fled to, if you like. And also I wouldn't have written in English if I hadn't come to this country. So in every society I went to, every place I've been, to Sudan, to Saudi Arabia, and now here, and now I live in Brussels. I think, like Jan said, you learn and you know, you meet people, you encounter incredible stories. And I think all of those feed into your writing somehow.
Thinking of it, I believe every new experience is good if you're a writer, when you're a writer. I mean, it enriches you. And we have this saying in Poland. It says that traveling is educational. And I believe the same rule applies to migrating. So, yeah, I feel educated in a way. I mean, I've been living in this country for 10 years. It has changed me, obviously, positive way. And, well, I mean, I wouldn't be able to write this book, this very book, if I wasn't here, so...
From the wonderful extracts I've read, it seems that you write about various characters, both refugees and migrants, and not always in a positive light.
No.
I think that giving these nuanced portraits actually is valuable, but what do you hope to achieve in your writing about migrants and refugees and mixing the two, their interaction with one another?
See, first of all, I don't think it makes any sense to paint a picture using bright colors only. It just doesn't really work. I mean, if you work on something and you want it to be at least, you know, close to real, if you don't want it to be fake, you need to use all the colors, from very bright to very dark, and well, that's my idea about it. But what I want to achieve, I am not entirely sure as I write, because it's my form of entertainment. Instead of, you know, playing computer games or watching football, I just write. So I do it for myself firstly, then, well, for other people.
I mean, can I just pick up on one point there about the painting immigration as a colourful picture in all its nuances? And I think that's hugely important. At Ramfield, we see about 200 people a week, and with a very small team. And one of the difficulties and challenges we have is that actually we work with, dare I say, the unsavoury nature of immigration. So we work with foreign national offenders, we work with criminals, we work with street homeless individuals, we work with people who are street addicts. It's not the conventional image of children, of the traditional, if there is such a concept, of the refugee image. And that's a challenge for us as an organisation, because we get a lot of criticism. We have worked in an area where the BNP were highly prolific, in a borough called Barking and Dagenham in East London. And there's still a lot of tension in that borough. And that, you know, if you go in there and you say, I'm calling a meeting for refugees, you will get lynched. Yeah, no doubt about it. But there's been a strange dynamic over the last couple of years, because whilst the government has created, and it has a department which has openly created a hostile environment, it talks about this publicly. So we see the Immigration Act of 2015, we've got the bill going through Parliament, it's received royal assent now, and more immigration regulations, restrictions are coming in that are basically honing in on people and making it impossible to survive in the UK. So if you thought it was bad before, it's virtually impossible. You can't open a bank account. You're still expected to pay the Home Office an extortionate fee, but you can't open a bank account or have a credit card facility to do that. You can't rent privately if you haven't got papers. You can't access a right to appeal in the same way as you could before. A whole myriad of rules, regulations and restrictions that stop people at every turn. So that's actually created a huge kind of challenge for us where we're having to navigate. And sometimes, I mean, and I draw on my favourite play for this, which is Dario Fo's Accidental Death of an Anarchist. And, you know, I do actually feel like the maniac in that book sometimes, because I feel like I'm a constant battle of wits with the Home Office. And that's not just on the individual level with individual clients, that's also on the strategic level to say, what on earth are you doing? And I think there is a huge concern about how do you actually display immigration for all its positives, and yes, its negatives, but that's not to say that those people who may be part of the less savoury aspect of immigration shouldn't be allowed here. Because my bottom line is, and this is I think where the creative arts come in particularly useful, is everybody's allowed to dream, and immigration is a dream. Whether you've dreamt of safety, whether you've dreamt for an economic, a better life, why not? Who are we as individuals to stand in the way of anybody else's dream? And I think that's where the creative arts in particular can play such a huge part, because we all have the right to dream and we shouldn't allow anybody to take that away.
Thank you. A really good response. Thank you. And Solomon, do you feel that your creative work has helped you come to terms with your own personal experiences? And this is as a refugee, having to adapt to life in a new country. And has it helped you process past trauma?
I find writing difficult. I'm one of those people who actually, I get tortured by it, you know, and yet I come to it all the time. I'm at my desk every day. I've been working on my book, on my second book for the past 8 years. And so I wouldn't go as far as saying that it helps, it's a kind of cleansing process, if you like, but it's definitely, it allows me to, it gives me, it's a place. I mean, writing, being a writer, for me, it's like a country. You know what I mean? It's like I have gone to places and I've been called refugee, I've been called black this, black that, you know, and so, or I have been, you know, my identity has been questioned as I go along, and I think for me, being a writer, existing within myself, you know, building a world, having a dialogue with myself, it allows me, actually, it gives my humanity back, if you like, you know, so I'm in control, and it's something I feel tremendously, and maybe that's why I come back to it, even though there's a kind of pain involved in the process. But also, for me, the act of writing is incredibly important. When I was growing in Saudi Arabia, for example, you know, I was told a lot of things about Christians, about Jewish, about even Sunni, Sufi, Sufi and Shia Muslim and women. And I think, and my brother introduced me to reading, and through reading, you discover actually that, you know, the fundamental, I have rediscovered the fundamental aspect of my humanity, if you see what I mean. And so in that sense, to me, I hope obviously to offer something similar as I go along, which is to offer something complex and nuanced, as Jan was saying about refugees. You know, they're not this or that, they're just human beings, just as like all of us here.
We had this right at the beginning about, is it my home, is it my second home, or is it actually my home? But for you both, when does it become your home? Do the arts help?
I think, if I can go, yeah. I think I felt at home in the cave, I think from day one. You know, I think, you know, it's not about the language, it's not about the culture, it's just about the humanity. So I remember I came from Saudi Arabia to this country, so I've been through really difficult experience, and before Saudi Arabia I was in Sudan, so there's a lot of kind of sense of freedom that I have encountered when I was in Sudan, you know, in the camp itself. And so in a way I felt London, the first place I stayed in London was in Kilburn, and you know, just watching the same street, you know, temple, mosque, everything existed in one place, you know, and for me, that felt like home. And so London felt like a bridge to my kind of, if you like, to my old self. And in a way, I felt immediately kind of regain a sense of my value, of my humanity, you know. What came after all the kind of struggle of being an immigrant is something different. But for me, home is just where I felt good in my heart, and I felt home immediately.
Good, thank you. Jan?
For me, it took a little bit longer, a while. I mean, I started feeling this country as a home when I started making friends. And I started making friends when I started, you know, learning language. I mean, language is something that helps you to contact with people. So then you can actually say what you feel, what you think, what's your opinion about something, and then you can understand the others. So, well, it took me a while, but then I started making friends, and yeah, this is what makes me feel that's the, you know, place to live, because I have friends around.
Good, thank you. And that's something that Sophie wanted to bring out because of today's theme, this evening's theme, that interaction with others, that can constitute a welcome. Just that, you know, the barest interaction, as long as it's friendly, that can be a welcome. Okay, all three of you, what more can we do to change public perceptions of migrants and refugees and foster a more caring attitude? So I've worked with campaigning organisations like English Pen. I've now tried to approach it from a different angle by using the arts to try and tell stories about refugee experience, migrant experience, to try and change public perception through fiction, through, you know, the written word. What more can we do? Rita, let's start with you.
The Charity Commission says that organisations like us shouldn't comment on tomorrow, but I'll say vote Remain. Simple as. You cannot afford to risk not voting tomorrow. It's the biggest change any of us will see in our lifetime. But also, the whole European dynamic, we have an opportunity here to really capture a different change in public mood, to actually paint a different story about immigration and actually try and tell a much more positive. We've got a unique moment here, not just politically, but also with the events of last week and Joe Cox, to actually capture a new spirit within this country that says actually immigration is not a bad thing. It's been popular to say immigration's bad. It's acceptable to be anti-immigrant. You know, they're coming here, it's a problem with housing, it's a problem with resources, you know, we're not all getting our fair share. We've lost our compassion. We've lost our compassion, we've lost our humanity. And until we actually are brave enough to say, it's okay to like somebody, we're not actually going to be able to move that forward. So I think politics is a huge part of this. I think there's also an element where you have to use your voice to walk alongside people who are struggling. And there is a real problem here that we turn the other way. It's somebody else's problem. So much of London's street homeless population are actually migrants. Yet we see them in doorways along Islington, we see them everywhere across London. And did you know, for example, that the contracts for the homeless charities, some of the homeless charities that work with these individuals, are paid on a payment by results basis, which means they get paid more in some cases for individuals to go back home than to help them stay in this country. Now, we need to know things like that, and we need to raise our voices collectively to say, that's not fair. And we shouldn't be scared to say, things aren't fair. So I think that's some of the stuff that we most importantly can do.
Jan?
Well, I'd love to believe that art can change people's life, but I'm not sure about it. I mean, of course, I do believe to a certain extent.
That it can change. I'm not saying that it can change, I'm saying it can change people's perceptions.
It can, but if we talk about books, it can, but, you know, the book has to be read. Otherwise, it can't change anything. So, well.
Yep.
Can I add also, I think it's really important to give a voice to the migrant and the refugees, to speak about their stories, and, you know, in whichever way they can, and the kind of thing that you guys do is really important, because a refugee, in my opinion, without a voice is like detention of the mind. So it's really important to allow, to give the different voices in this country a chance to articulate for themselves. But as far as art changing perception, I think to a certain extent I would agree with you. Like I said, when I was in Saudi Arabia and I was getting all those messages, at school about the others, and it was through smuggled books that we kind of got a true, a kind of sense, what the others were like, if you see what I mean. So there is a perception that a certain society will give you, but then there is a kind of art also will come and give you a different perception. And so for me, it helped me, stay within the range of my humanity. And so it's really important, both of them, that we give voices to people to articulate their own stories.
Thank you very much. A wonderful panel. Thank you, Rita, Suleiman and Jan. And do catch them afterwards over drinks.